It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 35th episode of Crime Over Wine, the only podcast with head-scratching true crime stories that are just better over a bottle of wine. I'm your host, Liam Collins, and this week my guest co-host is a meteorologist, a Chattanoogan, and a cat dad, all wrapped up into one. My guest co-host this week is Clay Smith. Hello, Clay.
Hey, Liam. I've been waiting for this for quite some time. So happy to finally be on the podcast, episode 35. Feel like that's my lucky number.
Yeah, and 35 weeks he's been texting me every week. When am I going to be on? When am I going to be on? When am I going to be on? So it just has not left me alone. So I kind of had to give in at some point. So no, so glad you're here. So I know we've been waiting for this for talked about this for a long time. So glad you're finally doing this. So Clay and I first met at a news station right here in Chattanooga. He was the weather dude, and he also worked in Greenville, Mississippi, and has ties to South Carolina and Alabama too. So like a whole Southern boy. Now he works for logistics here in Chattanooga.
Yeah, that's right, Liam. A Southern boy through and through. Grew up in South Carolina, moved around a bit, went to college, of course, in Alabama, at South Alabama, jumped around to Mississippi, landed up here in Chattanooga, the Scenic City, and fell in love with it, honestly.
Yeah, well, there you go. And so I know his wife is right in the other room. She's more like the true crime girly. So if you hear somebody shouting out injecting stuff, it's probably her. Just fair warning. So this week we are drinking Clean Slate's Riesling. It's from Moselle, Germany, and it's called Clean Slate because of the region's steep slate hills and winding rivers, which they say are essential to ripening grapes in a cool climate like Germany. It has flavors of fresh peach, crisp lime, and subtle mineral. And I've never had a German wine, and so I'm really interested to see how this one kind of rolls about.
I think this is my first too, and to be 100% honest with you, I'm not even really sure what a slate hill is. I'll have to do some research on that.
Yeah, so you'll see on the front, so it's a bunch of stacked flat rocks on the label. So maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. In fact, let's look it up.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely looks like a slate hill here on the label. So.
Okay, so what I'm getting here is a slate rock. You know what a slate rock is, I'm sure, right? And so what I'm getting here, in fact, I'll send you the picture, is just a bunch of slate rocks on a hill. It's kind of weird, but I feel like I've seen them kind of before, but not really.
Okay, so it's pretty self-explanatory then.
Yeah, I feel like it's pretty kind of once you see it, I think you're gonna be oh, that's a slate hill,
Yeah, when you see it, you know what it is.
Right,
that's
exactly.
Totally slate.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, well, without further ado, let's just go for the wine because I'm begging to figure out what a German wine tastes like. So here we go.
Oh, that's just a beautiful sound.
I know, I love that sound. It's probably my favorite sound in the world. Actually, my second favorite sound in the world. My favorite sound is the cork popping out. But this is a twist-off wine, which I say I will die on the hill of, bottles or wineries that sell wines with that twist off instead of pop off are missing out on tons of money because I would probably spend $10 extra on a bottle of wine just to hear the cork pop.
Amen.
I'm not even joking about that. Yeah, seriously, great sound. But thanks so much for coming on, Clay. Cheers to you.
Cheers. Let's get a taste.
Ooh, very sweet.
It's almost, to me, it's very similar to a Moscato.
Mm-hmm. Well, Riesling is a little drier than a Moscato. So barely, but yeah, it's very, very sweet. And I'm getting a whole lot of lime here for sure. That flavor is coming out big time.
Let me get another taste.
Yeah, I need one more.
I'm getting the lime. It's a little dry. Yes, I get it's drier than a Moscato. So It's good
Yeah.
though. I like it.
Yeah, and listen, everyone who listens to podcasts, I say it every single week. Dry wines are me, right? Like we're the same, and so like this is like again much like a complete opposite of my like taste palette typically. But if you're listening to this podcast and we're like begging me to do like a sweet wine and like recommend a sweet wine for you, this is one you're going to want to go for.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely sweet, but it's really not too overwhelming actually. Like I could definitely see this for just like a night out on the porch kind of thing. Like that's kind of the vibe I'm getting for this, like a little chit chat. Like if that's kind of the way you like to enjoy your wine, I feel like that's where you're going to want to go.
A little chit chat, and I think it would pair well with really any chicken dish. I'm feeling that would be pretty superb.
Well, this is a sweet wine, but definitely not like a sweet story we're talking about, like at all. Complete opposite of this, of kind of how I would like picture like a case that would pair well with this wine. This is like the complete opposite of what we're talking about. So let's get there. Clay, what do you think?
Let's do it. I'm ready to dive in.
Yeah, me too. Big time. I can't wait to tell you about this because I have not been able to stop thinking about this since I heard about it. So let's get there. So this week, I want to tell you probably, one of the top 5 most perplexing and confusing cases that I have ever heard of. It happened just down the road from where we're both staying right now, Clay, just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And the details of this case are equal parts disturbing and frustrating. This week, I want to tell you about Russell and Shirley Dermond and the Lake Oconee murders. Russell and Shirley Dermond had spent 60 plus years building a life together. They were happily married, a true example of what it means to grow old with somebody. They were married on December 15th, 1950, and had 4 kids and 9 grandkids together. Russell was a World War II Navy veteran who had semi-retired from being a clock manufacturer in the New York City area where they had both lived, but they moved to Atlanta in the mid-1990s to be closer to their children who had all moved down south. Their daughter lived in North Carolina, 2 of their sons had moved to Florida, and their 4th son was living in Atlanta. The couple had operated multiple Hardee's franchises around Atlanta, but ended up officially retiring and moving to Putnam County, Georgia, just about 70 miles southeast of Atlanta. They had bought this house in a gated community right on Lake Oconee for almost $750,000. It was gorgeous in a wooded area, nice and private. They had a dock, and the couple had bought a boat even, and were just, truly just living it up in their retirement. By the time 2014 had rolled around, the home was valued at upwards of $1 million, but they had sold the boat as they got older and were using it less and less.
Okay, so they were living quite the nice life, like living out their retirement, enjoying themselves, close to family. I love that.
Right. Yeah, everything that you like picture, like a couple in like their 80s, is kind of like how you want your retirement to go, right? Like live by the water, do whatever, like live in this nice home, this nice neighborhood, like you said, close to family. Like it just felt like that, like it was just and kind of what I picture is just like 2 people who just like stuck to themselves, like stuck to that routine, and like just very much so like did everything as without making too much of a splash, right?
Yeah, and I mean they were just grinding, enjoying life together. I mean they had a boat. We all look for a friend with a boat. That's important during the summer, right?
That.
And they were those people, and I've never been to Lake. It's Oconee, right?
Yeah, Lake Oconee. Yeah,
I've never been to that lake, but I know there's some beautiful lakes down there. So I'm sure they were just, I mean, valued at upwards of $1 million, which in today's market, that's probably what, 3, 4, 5.
So it was valued at $1 million in 2014. So 10 years later, probably probably close to 2. If I had to guess,
3,
I'm not a real estate person. I know you are, but
yeah, that would. Wow, that's crazy. I'm very interested to see where this is going to go because I haven't read up on this at all. So this is all coming at me fresh. and raw. So let's get into it.
Well, let's get there. So in May of 2014, Russell and Shirley were 88 and 87 respectively, and were really enjoying their retirement by, like we were talking about, doing everything that they loved. Russell was a golfer, a reader, and loved to walk around the neighborhood. Shirley was usually playing crossword puzzles, working in the garden, or playing bridge, but they weren't slowing down by any means. On May 3rd, the couple was due to show at a Kentucky Derby party, and I truly picture, the big hats and the bright colors, the works for this watch party. Now, the party was being held at a neighbor's house just a few houses down from their own. This was a yearly tradition for their friends to gather and watch the Derby, like a lot of people do. So, it was odd when the party was starting at 6 p.m. and they were late. Russell and Shirley were sticklers for timing, so them being just a few minutes late was just simply not like them. But what was even more odd for them was them not showing up to the party at all.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you're a punctual person, like, I like to be on time. At most, a few minutes late. But, yeah, I could see, I feel like this is how a lot of those true crime stories start out. Like, someone didn't show up, or they're late, or... Well, obviously, in this case, they're probably not going to make it, but I don't know yet. But
yeah, I mean, I think, and we've talked about it again, like before on this podcast. Like people's routines are so important, and like everyone has their routines, right? And like even if it's not necessarily like a routine in terms of like at this time you're here and at this time you're here kind of thing. Yeah. Like you have like a set of behaviors that you follow, right? Like you're always on time. I'm always like at least 30 minutes late, and so like so me showing up 30 minutes late or not showing up at all, like super not unlike me in any way. But like if they are the type of people who if they are 2 minutes late, like they're sending text messages saying, oh my god, I'm so sorry, and they're not showing up, like, and it's beyond that point, like that's off. And so I just say that all that to say, like, if somebody's like this is like a PSA to everyone out there, like if somebody's even the tiniest bit outside of their routine, like that should be a red flag for you, because if that person always does X and they're not doing X, like that's weird, and so you need, like, that should be setting off those alarm bells.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you're having dinner with Liam and he's 30 minutes late, that's okay. We expect that more of us, right?
Yeah, right. Like, sometimes I'm like 2 hours late and it's just like, oh, oops,
as long as you get there, that's all that matters.
Yeah, as long as I get there. And I usually say, hey, like running 2 hours late, to be fair, but
Yeah, communication's key.
But as the days went on with still no sign of Russell and Shirley and no apology or explanation as to why they didn't show up to the party, their friends start to get really weirded out, suspicious, and nervous. And so on May 6th, 3 days after this party was scheduled, when they still hadn't heard from Russell or Shirley, the neighbors walk over to their home to check on them. They find the door unlocked, and so they shout out to announce themselves. And when they didn't hear a response, they walk in. And the home was eerily still, nothing out of place, exactly how they would have expected to find their friend's home. Except as they look around the house and they feel their way into the garage, they find the couple's 2 cars exactly in their places. But when they enter and peek between the cars, they find something shocking and horrifying. The friends find Russell dead on the floor of the garage and surrounded by blood and towels soaking up the blood too. Now, they know it's Russell because they recognize him enough, of course, but the truly gruesome detail about their discovery is that his head had been cut clean off of his body, and it was nowhere to be found.
What? Okay, yeah, that is... I didn't expect that, but 3 days?
3 days. Yeah, and I definitely glossed over that way too much. Like, again, we're talking if this was like 1980 and like the people didn't see someone for 3 days, like, okay, because like, again, before social media, all this stuff, but like 2014 and you don't notice your neighbor who's just like 2 houses down has just like not been around for 3 days, and like, again, like you knew that they were supposed to be at this party and like didn't, like they didn't show, and like it's just not like clicking for you. Like, I don't know, like, again, I just can't imagine like not like having like a neighbor or a friend and like not seeing them for 3 days that like who I see regularly, and like just not like having that not be an alarm bell like until 3 days later.
I think for me, like, just not coming to the party, obviously, and not giving like any kind of notification that, hey, we're not going to be able to make it tonight.
Right.
Obviously that,
or an apology, hey, sorry, couldn't make it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because if they're punctual, then they're probably also going to be very good about communication and like, hey, we're not going to make it tonight. But 3 days seems like a long period of time. I mean, that's 72 hours to not check in, which I understand, like, people have their own lives, they're busy, but still.
Yeah, and like to give them the benefit of the doubt, like I guess like they're older, and so like maybe the thought was like, okay, like I'm sure they're not big on texting, that generation, like sure, but like I don't know, like to not be too invasive, I guess in terms of just like, okay, well maybe they had like some sort of emergency, like maybe they fell, you know what I mean, like maybe they had to go to the hospital, that kind of thing, because they're older, so. I don't know. I guess I could see like a little bit of that expectation of privacy, for them. But still, like, I don't know. If like all these things are like looking weird, it's weird, right? Like if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a freaking duck.
Yeah, it's a duck.
And so like this is like, not to like blame it too much on them. Like obviously they had nothing to do with this as far as I'm aware, but I don't know.
Oh man, that's just to walk in on that. I can't fathom that.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to the head too, right? I mean, again, like, you see, like, I can't imagine, like, how, like, nightmares for the rest of your life, right? Like, period. Yeah, big time. So, like, I don't know. And again, like, I'm sure they were expecting to walk in on literally anything else except for that, right?
Yeah, I don't even know how I would react to something like that. I've never seen anything like that.
I would throw up.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, big time. So, of course, they immediately call 911, and when police get there, they find the same thing that the neighbors do. Russell Dermond's lifeless, headless body lying in a pool of his own blood. They also said that it appeared as though Russell had been moved by at least a foot after he had died. The towels that I mentioned earlier, police said, were arranged in such a way that would stop the blood from dripping to the garage door. So police said that whoever did this to Russell likely did this to try and buy them some time, since blood dripping from the garage would surely alert people outside of the home. Police said that Russell was likely decapitated post-mortem and can't initially figure out a cause of death for Russell, and even to this day have not made that determination definitively, but they do get a pretty good idea. They find gunshot residue on Russell's collar, which leads police to believe that Russell may have been shot in the back of the head before the perpetrator decapitated him.
This is a lot to unpack. Okay, so wow. So they really put some effort into this. Do you think this was something that was premeditated, or? So
I actually think the complete opposite. I think that a lot of this feels very reactive to me, only because it's like, so you kill somebody, and then all of a sudden, like it felt like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden, like the blood's getting to the garage door. Okay, let's mop it up and like stop it from getting there, so that way we can get out real quick. And then I don't like the decapitation's like a totally different like right field of how all of that worked. But like I would think that like if they thought all of this through that much, right, like they would have brought towels and like cleans it up in a way that that, and didn't just like leave it all there. It felt very much so like, let's just like clean it up to the point of that will buy us a little bit more, like a day or so more time to like get out of Dodge.
Yeah, so like I'm guessing maybe just going through their thought process. You shoot the guy in the back of the head. That's what we're assuming happened, correct? So they're like, oh, maybe we can somehow, or maybe the cops or whoever comes to the crime scene can trace this shell back to us somehow. Maybe that was part of the thought process.
Yeah,
I don't know,
because that's exactly what police think. So police believe that he may have chosen to cut off this person may have chosen to cut off Russell's head because the bullet likely was lodged inside of it, which would have at least helped to point police in the general direction of a possible suspect. So they took the head to hide evidence.
Okay, so that's I guess that was a founded theory that I had.
I think you have a future as a cop, I think.
I don't know if I could handle that. See, just coming up with scenes like this, I can't.
Sure.
There's no way I could handle it. Like,
yeah, it's crazy because I talk about it all the time, but like if I saw pictures, it would be the end of it for me. So.
Yeah, there's absolutely no way. I mean, like, this is a lot. I mean, that had to be a lot of blood.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah, it's time for a little sip.
Big time. Yeah, big gulp, for sure. Yeah, and I think, just like going back a little bit here, only because we kind of like jumped it a little bit. So initially, like a lot of people, like their theories, right, is that like the head was like some sort of like trophy for them again, like that was the initial thought. And so like, because they were just like, okay, cut his head off, whatever, take it for themselves, okay. And then I think that like once they start like poking around and find the gunshot residue, that's when like this theory comes. But like also too, like my brain goes to like we're talking about mid Georgia, right? And like this older dude, right, probably more conservative, and so he probably has probably has a gun, right? And that's my guess. And so like I don't know. I don't really buy the assumption here that like the gunshot residue must have meant that whoever killed him shot him in the back of the head. Because like, again, I'm sure he shoots quite a bit, and so like I'm sure there's some gunshot. I don't know. I never saw how much was on there, and like again, I have to believe that like the police know more of it than I do because I don't know jack shit about guns. But I would guess though that there would be something around his collar, right? If he shoots shotguns, whatever, that is right there. So I don't know, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. This is just so tricky because it's just, I don't know. It's odd, and I know there's a lot of crime stories out there that are just wild. Of course, my wife Jordan, she could attest to a lot more of those than I could, but
maybe we should swap you guys out really fast.
Yeah, a substitution real quick. Yeah, but man, I don't know. I mean, it just seems like such a strange, almost barbaric thing to do. I don't know. I feel bad for the neighbors obviously you feel bad for the couple. I mean, that's like number one. Right. But I mean, coming in on that's, I don't know. I mean, that has to stick with you forever.
Yeah. Again, I don't really know where to even like go with all of that. Like, I don't know. And like, again, so I keep going back and forth. I'm kind of where you are right now in terms of like the premeditation versus like the reactive part of this whole thing. Like, I feel like the head part, right, feels very reactive even too, right? Because to me, I'm picturing, right, like how this all happened, right? He is like going out for the day, is going to do whatever, and suddenly is like attacked by somebody and probably shot in the back of the head, maybe completely unbeknownst, like totally it's caught him off guard kind of thing. And that's when all this all these things start popping up in their heads in terms of just like, okay, well, shoot, like the bullet's still here, like in his head, like crap. So let's like cut his head off. Oh my gosh, there's so much blood. It's dripping down towards the garage. Let's clean it up really fast. That way we can just like buy ourselves a little bit more time. And like also too, and like we talk about this a little bit later on, but like in terms of the incision that like cut off his head, it's like not like straight through, right? Like this is not somebody who like knows what they're doing based on what they say. It's like very crude. And so it's like clearly like, again, like kind of what I picture, like I would like, how I would do it in terms of, if I ever wanted to like decapitate someone, just like I don't want to.
Yeah,
but if I did it, like I feel a lot of like jagged edges and that kind of thing, and just like not like a one clean like point being is that like the way I picture that is like okay, well, let's cut his head off. What are we going to use to cut his head off? Like whatever's in the garage kind of thing, and like that's how it happened.
Yeah, that's just so crude. I mean, this guy's probably getting up, thinking he's about to have a good day, maybe go play golf. I know a lot of older gentlemen and younger love to play golf. Like, let's go out, play a quick 18 holes and then go to this Kentucky Derby party. I mean, that sounds like a pretty damn good day to me,
right?
Right. But okay, Liam, so here's a question I have for you. What the heck happened to Shirley?
Well, Clay, that's the thing that is even more puzzling to police, because Shirley is nowhere to be found. Police believe that Shirley may have been abducted somehow. Russell does have a severe wound on his finger, which has pieces of Shirley's hair tangled around it. So police believe that the suspect may have attempted to attack Shirley and Russell, and, that he likely tried to protect her, injuring himself in the process. But there's still no sign of Shirley anywhere, but yet her phone and purse were still found inside of the house. There's no sign of a break-in or a struggle that would indicate that Shirley was attacked inside of the home. They also don't find any of her blood or any DNA of hers that they wouldn't expect to find inside of her own home.
Okay, so I think what I'm going to do here, Liam, is I'm going to pour me a little bit more of this Riesling.
Very good call.
And then, the question I asked about, what the heck happened to Shirley, I'm still thinking, what the heck happened to Shirley? I don't know. It's just kind of bizarre.
And I think you're in the same boat of police, right? And the local sheriff said that this didn't appear to be some random crime. In fact, police said that they believe that Russell and Shirley likely knew their attacker because of there not being any sign of forced entry or struggle inside of the home. Police start looking at the days before Russell's body was found, and they discover that Russell was last seen by anybody on May 1st. They were able to confirm that Russell had been running errands in Eatonton, which is a town about 20 minutes west of Lake Oconee. He had transferred money from the drive-thru at the local branch of People's Bank around 2:15 in the afternoon, and then went to the local public store to pick up a prescription for Shirley's upcoming cataract surgery, where he also bought a loaf of bread and a few cucumbers. Again, totally normal things for, anybody to be doing.
Yeah, for sure.
11 Alive News, the NBC affiliate in Atlanta, posted the raw surveillance camera video from Russell's time in the Publix. And Clay, I'm going to play it for you if you could just kind of describe what you're seeing for our listeners. And we're also going to link to this video on our website and in our show notes too.
Which guy is he?
So he's the guy with the green shirt and the khaki pants.
Green shirt, khaki pants. Okay.
Yeah.
He seems like a really wholesome guy.
Yeah.
It's always so weird to me to see people alive, days before or hours before they get killed.
Right. This is probably like you said, this is at most 24 hours before the end of his life in the most gruesome way possible.
That's just bizarre because these are he's lived a good life more than likely. You're just enjoying retirement at that point. Mm-hmm. He looks to be in pretty good health. He's moving around really good.
Right. At 88, right? Yeah, that's what kind of shocked me too. And I think and even he even pulled again 2014 he pulls out a paper list, which I thought was kind of funny because again he easily could just use his phone but didn't. So I thought that that kind of stood out to me. And then I'm not sure if you're there yet, but around 1:20 of this video, he comes up to some guy he looks like he knows, and they're talking again, looking like they're just just catching up, probably chatting about whatever, and goes about his day, nothing, I don't know, just nothing stands out to me here at all. They again, and I they published this for, the reason of just to say this was just a normal thing, right? This was the last moments that anyone saw him alive or, on camera anyway. So
yeah, it's just bizarre. He's just, there's nothing, like you said, that looks out of the ordinary to me. This is just a guy who was picking up his groceries. His wife probably wanted him to get, a few cucumbers. They might be making some cucumber water to, get ready for the Derby. I don't know. Again, it's just mundane, right? So when police interview Russell and Shirley's friends and family, police said that one of their 3 sons, Brad, said that he had spoken to both of his parents later that night, but I never saw a specific time of when this call happened. Brad said this wasn't an abnormal conversation at all. They asked each other about each other's days, said goodnight, and went about their normal routines. Police gave a real wide window for Russell's estimated time of death. They believe that Russell likely died between 4:30 on May 1st when their postal worker says they delivered the mail that day, and 6 o'clock on May 3rd when their neighbors say that Russell and Shirley never showed up for the party.
But as the days went on, as they searched for Russell's killer, the search for Shirley was getting concerning. Police were really worried for her safety, but that worry turned into a completely different and much darker feeling when they finally found her. All right, so Clay, about halfway. I'm at like a quarter way, have a quarter way left of this glass. Listen, like this is gonna come as like a bit of a shock to people like listening to this at home. I'm liking this wine, y'all. Like I'm not like, again, like this. It's a little too sweet for me. Like wouldn't be able to drink more than a glass at a time. But like I'm digging this wine.
It's really good. It is sweet, and I would say I wouldn't like to drink more than a glass at a time, but I'm on number 2, so that would make me a liar. But it is really good, and I haven't quite had dinner yet either, so it's, I'm feeling really into this now.
Yeah. Well, you'll have to, once you pop off, you'll have to get Jordan to send us over a rating too, because I know she's more into wine than you are. So, just like, get the whole range of folks in here. So.
Well, yeah, if there's any's left.
If there's any's left, I have a feeling there's not going to be any's left after that.
If there's any left. I'm going to start adding S's to everything, I guess.
Yeah. That's very South Carolina of you, for sure.
Yeah, it comes out.
All right. Well, on that note, let's get right back to the story, because it's about to take a turn. I really hope you're sitting down, and I know you are. But if anyone at home isn't sitting down, it's about to get crazy, so take a seat. So on May 16th, 10 days after the Dermond's neighbor found Russell, Shirley was found by a fisherman on Lake Oconee. Shirley's body was floating in the lake near a dam that was 5 miles from the Dermond's home. Shirley had 2 30-pound concrete blocks tied to her ankles and 3 deep wounds from what the medical examiner said was likely a blunt object to the back of her head. They ruled her cause of death blunt force trauma, a homicide.
Liam, what in the world? That is not... Wow. That's crazy. 2 30-pound concrete blocks. Like, I know we were talking earlier, was this, reactive or premeditated?
Right.
This kind of throws a wrench for me, because, like, where do you, like, were there just 2 30-pound concrete blocks on hand, or?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I feel like again, she's a gardener, so, like, I feel like she probably, maybe that was, like, part of the, the surrounding of her garden. Like
the landscape?
Yeah, something, I could see that.
That's fair.
Like, yeah, and, like, you don't just, like, bring that along, right? And especially, like, because we're talking, like, reactive versus, premeditated, right? Like, this, to me, like, is even more evidence of reactive, and I'll tell you why. Because it's, like, totally different. Like almost the complete opposite from how people found Russell, right? Because Russell was still in the home, head cut off. Like they think that it was a gunshot wound. I'm not totally buying it was a gunshot wound still, especially now that we know about Shirley. Because like why wouldn't she have like this person just shot both of them if they had a gun, right? So that kind of throws a wrench into it for me also. But again, two totally different ways to kill people. If we're going along the gunshot wound theory here, right?
Yeah.
So this to me, like, again, like if you're going to premeditatively kill 2 people, kill a couple, why would you do it in 2 totally different ways? That's kind of what catches me off.
Yeah, it definitely throws a wrench into things, and like just, I don't know, it just as, someone who would have to actually work on this case, it has to be frustrating. I mean, you have to be just extremely frustrated, because it's just kind of bizarre. I think I said it earlier, but it's bizarre, honestly.
Yeah, and frustrating too for them, because I'm sure that they searched that entire neighborhood for Shirley, and so to find her in the lake 5 miles from the house, right? That must just be a huge gut punch in terms of just like how could we not have found her before some random person found her, and also too what gets me a little bit is like she's a freaking grandma, right? Like it's like and he's a grandpa, right? And it's like totally like defenseless individuals, right? And they died in like one of the most brutal ways that I have ever heard of. So that just like gives me like a weird pit in my stomach.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrible. And you also have to think like that 10-day window after finding the husband dead in the garage, and then, eventually Shirley, like, the neighborhood has to be
on alert,
at complete unrest.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, is there a serial killer on the loose? Like,
also, the other part of this too, just because we're talking about like premeditated versus reactive a lot in this podcast, right? So police said that this didn't actually really feel like a professional murder at all. Not someone who had ever done this often, if they had ever done this at all before, right? Like cut someone's head off and then also, weighed someone down in a lake. The cuts that had severed Russell's head was jagged, and anyone who knew anything about dumping bodies would know that two 30-pound concrete blocks wouldn't hold someone for forever. Eventually, the gases build up inside someone's body, and that would far outweigh the weight from those blocks. And so, police believe, because of the crudeness and the intensity of the murders, that they are searching for someone who knows the Dermonds personally, and likely had a grudge to bear against the both of them for one reason or another. But finding that person was really hard to find. I mean, they lived a quiet, peaceful life, didn't bother much of anybody, a normal, older couple. They did interview all of their children, but every single one of them passed the polygraph test, and they were cleared as a suspect. But they couldn't interview all of Russell and Shirley's children. They only have 3 surviving children left. Russell and Shirley's other child, Mark, was actually murdered himself in 2000. Mark was trying to buy crack cocaine in Atlanta when he was shot and killed. Police found the man responsible, though, for that murder, and he was in jail in 2014. But police say that Mark's murder was totally unrelated and unconnected to Russell and Shirley's murders.
I mean, at this point, you have to feel for the other 3 siblings, because that's a lot to have to endure. I mean, just in a 14-year span,
right?
I mean, I can't imagine that, honestly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because what are the odds that, one of your family members are murdered, let alone 3, and 3 completely different ways, and again, 3 very gruesome different ways, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. That has to be obviously very hard on the other kids,
Yeah.
and just everything about this to me is obviously fishy. I mean, it's just strange, but you're right. Like the 30-pound concrete blocks, that's definitely not enough to hold someone down for a long period of time.
Yeah, for a little bit, sure. For 10 days, probably I could see that, right?
Yeah, a couple days, but eventually, they're gonna resurface. So
yeah,
the reactive side of things really starts to make a little more sense here, to me. I think personally, but I don't know. It's just you gotta feel for them. I mean, they were in their upper 70s, living their best life, and it's just not a way to go.
Well, and again, reactive only in the sense of that this wasn't very well thought out, right? But it's still it feels like it just doesn't sit well with me, I suppose, that that you reactively killed two people who are presumably in the same home in 2 completely different ways. And so I guess if you're going to shoot somebody in the back of the head, right, and then bludgeon somebody and then dump them in the lake, why, first of all, why not do both, unless maybe you just can't carry Russell for whatever reason, that kind of makes sense to me. But then why cut off his head, not her head? I'm the mechanics of this are really hard for me to follow, I suppose. Obviously, I'm a sane-headed person. I like to think so anyway. But so it's just hard for me to really get to that point of even in the most deranged individual's mind, how did this all kind of happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, maybe to a degree on the front end, maybe it was premeditated, but then you have amateurs or people who have never done anything like this, then turn reactive.
Yeah,
I guess that's possible.
Yeah, something was premeditated here, right? That is the only thing that makes any sort of sense to me, I suppose. Because they clearly went into the home with some sort of means or some sort of end in mind, whether it was murder or some other crime to be committed, and murder was just happened in the process, and they just freaked out. Okay, I don't, and also so then and again, not an FBI agent by any means. I like to think I am, but like I'm not. So like if we're like profiling this dude or dudes, whatever, like to me, I'm thinking, okay, well maybe they had like some sort of like closer relationship with like a maternal figure in their life, and like maybe that's why they couldn't like kill Shirley.
Yeah.
To like in such as a gruesome way, or like maybe they had like some sort of relationship with like a paternal figure in their life that like made them want to like kill Russell even more gruesomely than they did to Shirley.
I mean, yeah, I guess there definitely could be like some childhood trauma that maybe sparked this, and like you said, maybe the original crime wasn't murder. Maybe it was robbery or something else, but it kind of led to that because sometimes things snowball and get out of control. So
right.
Who knows?
Yeah. Well, and also, so going back to Mark here for a second, too, because when I first heard about Mark, I was like, oh, like game over for me. Find out whoever killed Mark, and like that'll get something, that'll connect somehow, right? But like then I start like again like connecting the dots here, and like if Mark's murder had something to do with drugs, like he was caught up in some bad lifestyle, like okay, sure, like that's aside. But it was 14 years earlier, right? And like sure, like if that was somehow connected, like the dude had some sort of grudge against Mark, and like maybe assumed that Mark was hiding stuff at his parents' house, and like that's how everything happened. Okay, like it wouldn't be 14 years later, like right, it would be like we'd be hearing about this much sooner, after 2000s. Like it wouldn't be in 14 years later, and again like 70 miles away.
Yeah, that's a lot of time to pass in between, so it would be like I think it would be a stretch to kind of connect that, but some people hold grudges, so. Yeah, but dang, I mean, 14 years. That's a long time.
And like what are the odds that like whatever you need from Mark or like his family, whatever, is still there 14 years later? Like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's kind of a reach, honestly.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yeah. So, but then again, so like I keep going, and I was about to move on, but I'm not. But like again, like I go back to like I believe in a lot of things. I believe in ghosts. I believe in in psychics. I believe in aliens. I believe in a lot of stuff. I don't believe in coincidences when it comes to homicide investigations. And again, like I said before, like what are the odds that one person in your family is murdered in such a gruesome way, let alone 3 different people 14 years apart, and in 2 of the, like 3 of the most violent ways that you can possibly imagine. So
exactly.
I just can't. I don't know. I just can't even like fathom a world where these 2 things aren't connected for that reason alone.
Yeah, and then like if you're the other 3 kids, like you kind of like, are you looking out behind your shoulder? Like what's going on? Is the family cursed? I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, this is feeling very Final Destination to me. But like not probably But anyways, but the Putnam County Sheriff's Office does bring in the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit to put together a profile of the person who they said was likely responsible for these murders. And the local sheriff told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that they are more than likely looking for a man who likes guns and knives. And that's about it, which, to me describes just about every single man in the South, but like, okay, that's what they come up with.
I mean, you're right about that. Like, born and raised in the South, like that's narrowing it down to 85% of the population. So
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, they're not really getting much close there, so yeah, I don't know. But police also believe that they are possibly searching for multiple people because they don't think that it's likely that one person could have done all of this completely undetected. They said it wasn't physically impossible, but highly unlikely for them to be, looking for only one person. But police do end up sharing a bit about what they think is possible for this murder. Police say that there are a few ways that this could have happened. Now, here's where I get caught up in all of this, a good bit. This neighborhood is described as a gated community, like we were talking about, and it like totally is, but the security in this neighborhood is pretty loose, actually. There's not like a pass you need in order to drive into the parking lot, or, a code, kind of what I think about when I think of gated communities. There's a guardhouse at the front who keeps an eye on things, or At least they're supposed to. That's their job. But it's not part of this guard's responsibilities to keep a record of who came in and who came out. Now, there were security cameras at the entrance to the community, but wouldn't you believe it, they weren't working the day of the murders.
Okay, so that's super fishy.
Yeah.
I mean, were they working before and after, or was there like a lapse? Like, do you know those details? Or
so police said that the storm had actually taken them out a few days before, and they just like hadn't gotten around to fixing them yet. But police said that even if they were working that day, they weren't quality enough that they would have been able to pick out anything identifiable that could have pointed them in the direction of Russell and Shirley's killer or killers. So I guess like to answer your question, Clay, like kind of, I suppose, but like again, just like I guess the worst coincidence in the world, which again, not buying coincidences, but
yeah, but also like, so, you know, I was a big fan of the show Ozark. I'm not sure if you've ever watched that, but the guardhouse is, I'm assuming, for the roads that come in and out of the community, right? But we're on a lake, so my mind starts going on that. Like, did they pull up to their dock, you know? Because obviously there's probably not going to be cameras down there. So I think that is also a possibility.
Yeah. Clay, I said it before and I said it again. You are thinking just like these cops in this situation. So I do think that you have a calling that, you know, that you missed here. But we're going to get there in a second. So hold that thought big time, because we are going to talk about that. But you know, this to me, you know, because immediately when I read all these details, right, and I heard this whole kind of this full story in terms of, you know, all of these weird things that like, you know, just felt like it was like the right place, the right time kind of thing, and like this seems like it. Like, this to me, like, screams two things. One, screams inside job. Like, that's, like, in some way, shape, or form, someone who knows this neighborhood very, very well, you know, that you know, who knew, you know, people's, you know, comings and goings, and knew, you know, when the perfect time to strike kind of thing would have been, or, like, and the perfect, you know, people to strike, you know, kind of thing. And then two, it also says, like, big time scoped out, like, you know, did a lot of recon, right? And so the type of person that I'm thinking of here is some sort of, like, service person, some sort of, like, delivery person, someone who goes to that neighborhood, you know, once a week, you know, who knows the people who live there, and, you know, knows, hey, security cameras are out in some way, shape, or form, like, knew that a storm took these things out somehow, and, like, knew that this was the week to do it, right?
Yeah, you know, and was there actually a storm that knocked those cameras out? Because, like, do we have confirmation of that?
That's what police said. Police said that they tried to look for security camera video, and they said that, I'm assuming they were told probably by like the homeowners association, like, nope, sorry, like they weren't working this week because of a storm came through.
That just makes me wonder, like, was there actually a storm? I mean, you know, if there wasn't, then like maybe you could narrow it down a little bit. But I mean, if there was a storm, obviously, like, the cameras may have been knocked offline. But I'm just saying, like, did they really do their due diligence? Was there a storm, or, you know, any kind of thing of that could actually knock the power out? So that, you know.
Yeah. I will say, so on that note, because a lot of times on this podcast, like, we're often talking about, you know, cases where like the victims just like slip through like police's fingers, right? Like, in like, for whatever reason, we talk about cases a lot of cases on this podcast where there were a lot of bad cops in the situations. Yeah. In this case, like, that is the complete opposite of the situation. Like, I saw a lot of really, really, really dedicated investigators that like were really frustrated by this case and just couldn't connect the dots, kind of thing. And so I give, you know, Putnam County Sheriff's Office a whole lot of due here, you know, to because they you know, to this day are not giving up on this case. So I have to imagine that, like, if you know, if a storm really didn't come through, and they're saying a storm came through, like, they would probably, like, their BS meters would probably be going off pretty hard.
Yeah.
So.
Of course. Well, that's good to know. I mean, you know, I'm just kind of trying to think, I guess, outside of the box a little bit. I just keep going back to how frustrating this has to be, and still, you know, has to be, you know, even now. But I just don't think I could do it.
Yeah, and like, also, so if we're going like kind of what makes me kind of shy away from like this idea of like somebody who like has been thinking about this a long time is, again, kind of what we're talking about, like, pretty much this whole episode about like the premeditated versus reactive kind of thing. Like, the actual murders themselves feel very reactive to me, and so I find it hard to think about somebody who, you know, went through so much effort to, like, get rid of the cameras, do whatever, and like, orchestrate, all of these, things to make all this happen, as opposed to someone who just maybe like pounced on the opportunity, like saw that the cameras were out, knew what the kind of behaviors were of people, and like, took that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that side of things. It's just, I don't know, like just sitting here, 2 glasses of wine deep, it's frustrating me. So I can't even imagine how they feel, like, what, years into this?
Yeah, and they weren't even drunk, so, So
I would just say I'm buzzing.
So police say that the perpetrator or perpetrators could have entered the community 3 different ways, either by foot, by car, or by boat. Now, I'm not buying that he walked into the neighborhood like on foot, and here's why I'm not buying that story. First off, I'm sure in these kind of neighborhoods, like somebody walking on, into this neighborhood would have set off someone's alarm bells, seeing presumably a stranger walking to the neighborhood and up to someone's, front doorstep, especially after they heard about what happened to Russell and Shirley, like just does not sit well with me at all. And the idea of them driving there doesn't feel right either, for the exact same reason, right? Like, this isn't like a huge community. It's basically one road, maybe 2. So I'm positive that everyone knows the kinds of cars that they're used to zipping around town. Plus, if they had this car and wanted to get rid of Shirley, like, why wouldn't they just like put her in the car and drive her further than the lake that was literally in their backyard?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be by boat, right? I mean, that's the only thing that really makes sense, because, I brought it up earlier, and, people are going to notice those odd cars or whatever may be coming into the neighborhood. So, got me thinking, like, someone on the lake, maybe, or someone put in at the landing. I don't know.
Yeah, and like boats kind of, like, to me anyways, all kind of look the same, for the most part. So like that kind of like, maybe it like wouldn't stand out as much. Maybe I'm wrong though.
No, I agree, because like on a hot summer day, you look out at the lake, there might be 10 boats zipping by, and like you can't really differentiate most of them. So it's probably the best route to take.
Yeah. Well, and that's why like this theory actually sits pretty well with me, because police said they don't believe Shirley was killed at their home, because again, like we were talking about, they found no evidence of her being killed there. So it does feel okay to me that the perpetrator drove their boat up to the Dermonds' dock somehow, whether they lived on the lake or, put in at some sort of dock area, which may have been, again, less noticeable to neighbors. They attacked the couple, killed Russell, and then lured Shirley onto the boat, possibly killed her there, and dumped her body into the lake.
Yeah, that's kind of got the wheels spinning, because, I mean, why would they choose that dock to come up on, Like, obviously, they probably do have some prior knowledge of, hey, this is where they live. And there could be a grudge. I don't know. You know?
Yeah. Well, and also too, so because like you were talking about before about like neighbors noticing and stuff, like there are like so there was like a mention in one of the articles that I read about this, about how like there, like a lot of the neighbors had cameras, but most of the cameras were pointed at the docks and at their specific docks, right? Because like obviously like why would you point at the whole lake? Like you want to make sure that your boat isn't stolen, that's your only priority. And so like complicated things, again, it just like is pointing like the perfect set of circumstances to just be able to do this and get away with it.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to agree with you there, because I mean obviously by foot, like you said, really doesn't make sense, because people are going to put up red flags immediately. By car, people recognize cars. I mean, if you live in the same spot for years on end, you're gonna notice when a strange car comes up. But like, people might not be looking out their back window as much, and
right.
I don't know. It's tricky.
And too, like, I'm sure you're just like used to, like, especially springtime in Georgia, right? Like, I'm sure you're just like used to hearing like in your backyard kind of thing, like these boats zipping around, and like it's just a normal sight. Whereas like I hear a car drive by, like, and I'm like, okay, who's that? Like, who? Like, you know what I mean? Like that. Like, I feel like that's a much more normal, like, like thing to be like, to like be like keeping an eye out for, because like that, like, you're like nosy neighbors, and like I'm sure, like, listen, I know these kinds of neighborhoods, I'm sure these neighbors are like super nosy.
Yeah, even me, like living here in an apartment complex, if something out of the ordinary is happening outside, like you're gonna see me through the blinds, like my eyes gonna be right there and be like, all right, what's going on? This seems a little odd, and everyone's like that. I mean, you want to know what's going on,
right?
at the place you live.
Sure. Yeah, and there's like one obvious question that is still sticking out in my mind though in all of this, right? Like, why would they do this? Police believe that the initial motive behind this attack may have been a burglary, that the perpetrators likely believed, based on the appearance of their home or what have you, that the Dermonds had access to something extremely valuable somehow. But this still doesn't sit great with them, and here's why. First off, like we said, there was nothing amiss at the home at all. There was nothing missing, and there was very valuable pieces of jewelry out, and it was all still right there for the taking. Plus, if it was just this random attack, why target the Dermonds of all people? They did live in a very nice home, but it was far from the nicest or even most expensive home on the block. So if they wanted to steal something of value from this wealthy neighborhood and murder the homeowners in the process, wouldn't you target the richest people on the block? Like, get the most out of this huge risk you're taking here?
I mean, yeah, but also no. So I'm just kind of trying to like channel their minds, what they're thinking. Like, the richest people on the block, they probably have the best security system, I would assume. So let's go somewhere in the middle, and maybe that's where the Dermonds kind of fell, and that's what they were thinking. Like, okay, this will be an easier target. Maybe their security system isn't quite as sophisticated. And,
older couple too.
Yeah. I mean, if they've been scoping it out for a couple of weeks, they're like, all right, so this should be an in and out kind of thing. But I mean, that's just kind of where my brain goes.
Yeah, and like also like I have to imagine that like they probably saw this as like a good opportunity, right? Like I'm kind of landed kind of where you are too, in terms of just like sure, like they probably like nicer homes, you're probably right, like probably have much tighter stuff, but like, and then also too, like if you're like, this to me goes back to like they probably scoped this out for a while, like knew that this was the older couple, you could probably take them, right? And then like this was the way that you're gonna go for it. And then also too, I do just have to say, like, so because like sure, like again, if we're going off the burglary theory, like okay, but like there was nothing gone, like as far as they were aware, and so that kind of got me. But like we've talked about this on this podcast before, so I'll say it again. Like, I just have to say, like, you like never truly, like, first of all, you never know anybody as well as you think that you do, like, period. But like you definitely like in terms of just like strangers, in terms of just like your average everyday person, like you truly do not know what goes on in like the comfort of somebody's home, right? Like you don't know what somebody has inside of their drawers, you don't know what somebody has inside of their closets, so like who's like, I don't know, I guess I could see like a world where like if they're like their kids like are like going through like seeing if anything is missing, like I could see a world where like it's like there's like they have some huge stack of like rainy day funds, cash, like tucked somewhere, and for whatever reason maybe just nobody knew about it except for them, kind of thing. But and again, like this goes to where my brain goes, this is like some sort of electrical person, somebody who has been inside of that house before, probably snooped around a good bit, maybe saw where the cash was hidden, kind of thing, and like took it, and didn't really, and nobody else knew it was even there, like nobody would have even known that it was there.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, because I mean, like if someone's coming in to fix your, I don't know, we'll say refrigerator for this purpose, like if you're not there and they're coming in and let's say 9 a.m. and you're not getting back to 11, like that gives them 2 hours to snoop around,
right?
See what you have, and like, okay, if they have bad intentions, maybe at some point they're like, all right, when these people are out of the house, or even if they're not, we can go in there and make a quick buck. I mean,
yeah,
you just you never know what people's thought process, and that makes this so difficult.
Yeah, it sure does. And like, yeah, again, like you don't like, it's hard to like pin this on something, right? Because of exactly what you're talking about here. Because it really could be like this huge range of stuff. Because we just simply, like, there's so much we don't know. Like, there's so much we do know, there's so much we don't know about this case. And like, that's kind of, I think, the frustrating part for me, and like the frustrating part of the for the investigator, Shirley, at this point. So yeah, I don't know, but again, and going back to the theory of of this service guy, whatever, like a service guy, like somebody comes in and fixes my AC, whatever. Like I kind of have this general trust of them, kind of, right? Because it's like they go in people's houses all the time. Why would I think that they this is the kind of this is the time that they're gonna strike? And also I have nothing of value in my home at all.
Yeah.
So I'm surely gonna trust people a little bit more to not steal shit because I don't have anything to steal. But for them, I'm sure they're the exact same way. Older couple, I'm sure they probably had people come into their house quite a bit. So
yeah, I mean, I think in general, there's a lot of people that come in and out of our lives that we do. For example, this is kind of a personal example, but we're gonna have our landlord come in and inspect our property here. I believe next Monday, and generally that I trust them enough to come in here and not scope out the place. They're just looking at any issues there may be, but sometimes you can't you just can't put your trust in people like that because maybe they have bad intentions, if not now, maybe down the road. In 6 months they're not going to remember me. They're not going to remember me coming into their house to fix their refrigerator or microwave,
right.
Whatever it may be. So I think on a general day or just a general basis, we do put our trust in a lot of people that maybe don't deserve it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, no, big time. And again, I put myself into their shoes, and again, older couple, I'm sure that they had a lot of people come in, work on a lot of things because I'm sure they weren't, doing a lot of that stuff. And I go back to the kind of people they were, regardless of their age, right? A very, quiet, trusting kind of, couple in this very secure neighborhood. And I'm sure that their trust levels were very high for that very reason. Because they, just were that kind, they seem like those kind of people, right?
No, and yeah, I think trust obviously is such an important thing, but it can be equally as dangerous because if you put your trust into the wrong people, it can backfire in a pretty big way. And I'm not saying this is what happened here, but could be a case of that,
I mean, I think that makes the most amount of sense to me, because why else would you invite somebody into their home? Why else would there not be any sort of evidence of a struggle or a break-in any way? It just seemed like they were just, yeah, come on in, and then poof, everything happened all at once, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's just, it's difficult. This is definitely, it has to be super frustrating.
Yeah, and police too have a really frustratingly poor time investigating this brutal double murder. They got hundreds of tips and followed up on leads left and right for years, but nothing turned up anything conclusive. 8 years later, just this past year, the local sheriff gives interviews to local media in hopes that they could finally shake something loose after all of this time. He tells the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that the case became a personal and professional embarrassment for him. It was the only murder case that he could not solve as the county sheriff. He also tells Fox 5 Atlanta that they are waiting on the results of new evidence, and that new evidence comes in the form of cell phone data. Now, it's not totally clear what they expect or hope to find in this data, if anything at all, but he did say that they have been waiting for this new evidence for a while, and that they are using new technology to sift through that data that was not available to the department back in 2014, but that's pretty much where things stand on that, even to this day in August of 2023.
So much time has passed. I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope justice can eventually be served at some point, but if it was so difficult, in the last, 9 years, it's got to be super frustrating now, especially for me. I feel like when I start something, I have to finish it. So
sure,
if you're not able to finish that as the primary investigator, it's got to be really aggravating.
Yeah, well, and especially as, when you're working with things that are as intimate as murders, right, as people's lives. And so, yeah, I'm sure that has to be extra frustrating. And also, too, I just have to say, because we've talked about, so many cases on this podcast where, this new technology or these new resources suddenly become available. And, it's, they don't just toss around money, right? They agencies that give out grants and stuff don't just toss around money like this. You have to be able to prove that you there's a very solid chance you're going to find something like groundbreaking from this. And so that gives me a little bit of hope here, because if they are like redigging into all this stuff, like I have to imagine that they have like a really good reason to be able to do that. Otherwise, like the money, like to be able to get this new technology and get these new resources just simply would not have been available to them, period.
Yeah, it's just like for me, like I know there's a ton of technology out there now, like AI and this and that, but like I'm just kind of curious to what that technology is. Like, how could this like further the case? Like that just that's something that really sticks with me.
Yeah, and again, I don't really know like what exactly the technology would be able to do with cell phone data. Like I could see with like with DNA or with like, you know, like some sort of like reconstructed stuff, like okay, like there are like leaps and bounds have been made like just in the last like year alone on that front. But like with cell phone data, like I don't really know what they could get that they couldn't have gotten back in 2014. But like again, have to trust them. Like I don't even know where my mind would go with that, but I have to trust them that like they're on the right spot for that. So
yeah, I mean, there's technology out there that I can't comprehend, so I'm sure I'm sure they have access to God knows what.
You know, as for Russell and Shirley's family, though, their kids are, you know, absolutely determined to close this case that has torn them apart on the inside. Brad said he still has dreams of his parents, and in those dreams, they would come to him and try to give them some clues about who was responsible for killing them, but the dream would end right before they could tell him anything of substance. So, like, absolutely heartbreaking there. As for the police, who have spent hours combing through this case file, they are as motivated as ever to find something conclusive. So if you have any kind of information about the murders of Russell and Shirley Dermond, you are asked to call the Putnam County Sheriff's Office at 706-485-8557, and we're also going to put that number in our show notes and on our website too.
Yeah, you know, just as a thought, they seem like really wholesome people, so I think, you know, just giving the three, you know, children just that sense of like knowing what happened, I think that would be big, because I mean, this is, for me, like, you know, I'm not a huge true crime buff, but it's really got me scratching my head over here. So
yeah, and like you have to, like, again, like you have to imagine like losing your parent in like any sort of way is like has to be like one of the hardest things that you go through, right? And so I just can't imagine like a world like where like your parents are murdered in this like awful way, like one of the worst ways that you can possibly ever imagine anyone being killed in, right? Like, so yeah, I have to guess that this is just something that's just like keeping them like awake at night every single night.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like personally, if this was like, I'm just gonna put myself into their shoes for a second, but like for me, I think you have to get that closure. Like closure is an important thing here for me, and I'm sure for many, you know, listening. Yeah. So I hope that eventually they can find that. Yeah. Because this has frustrated me, and it's only been an hour and a half.
Right. Well, yeah, and like so because we covered the episode on episode 25 of this podcast, we covered the Boy in the Box, right? We covered the Joseph Zarelli case. That was 70 years later that they finally like got the technology advanced enough to like, you know, find Joseph Zarelli's name, to be able to give his name back to him. And so like point being is that like I'm like that case alone in and of itself like shattered like every single expectation for me to be able to say like no, like too much time has passed, like if they haven't solved it by now, like they're not going to solve it ever. Like nope, there's no timeline on this at all. Like they're like take as much time as you need. Like I will personally never believe that it's been too much time has passed to be able to solve this case. And I feel like there has to be something. Like it just takes something. Like there's a one piece that's missing here, I feel like, that is going to be able to blow this whole thing open. I really strongly believe that.
No, yeah, and you can get that one piece, and it may be 20 years, but you know that's gonna still provide, you know, those who love these people that sense of closure. So I don't know, you know, I feel invested in this now. And I'm gonna do Google searches here and there just to see, like, maybe you know, hopefully they're able to find, you know, who did this and why they did this. I think the why to me is more interesting than than anything.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and again, we'll definitely be popping back into your feeds if there are any sort of updates in this case for sure. So keep your notifications on for this podcast, and also get your Google alerts out, and send stuff our way if something if you see something before we do, because we want to get on top of that for this kind of case. For sure, because it is, I will never be able to stop thinking about how all this played out. I just won't. So, but I just have to say that is all that we have for you this week. So, Clay, thank you so much for coming on. It was so great talking about this case with you.
Yeah, Liam, thanks for having me. Of course, this has been a moment of anticipation for me for a while. So, really enjoyed it. The case was very interesting. It really had my gears just all out of whack, honestly. And the wine, pretty darn good as well. So, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I do have to say, to talk about the wine again, because now that I'm drinking it again, and I'm halfway through now, the lime flavors here are going a good bit, and so that is definitely coming out a lot more as the more it aerates and the more it comes out. So
yeah, absolutely. And I'm more than halfway in. So all of those Slate hills over in Germany. Yeah, I appreciate you very much.
We may have to go visit the Slate Hills in Germany and maybe do a wine tasting or two. So
I'm not against it.
Well, tell everyone where they can find you and your work online, Clay.
Okay, so obviously I worked with Liam at here in Chattanooga. I was a meteorologist for a while, but now I actually work at a transportation company here in Chattanooga. But you can still follow me. I have my Facebook page still active, so occasionally I'll post on that, but not as much. But meteorologist Clay Smith, go ahead and put in a search, and if you want a personalized forecast, I might be your guy.
There you go. If you really just want super hyper local weather,
that's my key.
Well, thank you again so much for coming on, and thank you all so much for listening. We are going to put all of our sources on our website so you can read everything for yourself and probably come up with a few theories too. And if you are just loving this podcast and are just wondering how you can tell anyone and everyone about it, the best way to help others discover this podcast is by leaving us a 5-star rating and a review wherever you are listening right now. So make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you're wondering what we have in store for you next week, here's a quick sneak peek. Hello, everybody. It's Liam.
And I'm Alyssa Rosano. Next week, we are bringing you the story of a bizarre secret that a town in northwest Missouri has kept for more than 40 years.
It's a complicated story that begs one question. How far will the people of Skidmore, Missouri go to hide the ugly side of town? You'll find out next Wine Wednesday for another episode of Crime Over Wine.
Proud member of the Podnuga Network.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.